So for those of you who've been following my channel or know me personally, you know that when it comes to comic books, I'm more prone to DC Comics. Why? Because in my opinion, I think the characters are very likable. I think a lot of the worlds in there are way more interesting than what Marvel has. And ultimately, when comparing the two companies, Marvel feels like it focuses too much on realistic problems and stories, whereas the suspension of disbelief is very, very real in DC. And I feel that they've always done a really good job when it comes to story writing. Now, that's not to say Marvel hasn't dabbled in that before, but as it stands currently right now, Marvel is really focused in reality, with there being current exceptions and alternate realities and such. So, why am I against DC? Well, funny thing is I was going to do several verses, and they were going to be very small, where I was going to be talking about things going on in DC that I just don't like in general. Well, instead of doing several, I'm going to put them all into one big one. So this is going to be me versus DC Comics in a whole. And we're going to start off with an idea that I'm not a huge fan of, and that is their year one concept. What that is essentially, it's their way of doing another origin rewrite of a certain character or characters without having to rewrite the entire story, because that's essentially what Rebirth is now. It's a complete and total reboot of everything, because DC was basically telling their fans, my bad for the New 52, and I have to agree with them. New 52 line was not good. And that's what Rebirth is. Now, year one is basically their way of doing that in the middle of a current line, so it doesn't affect what's currently going on. It's separate of the current comics coming out. And while they're enjoyable to a degree, the one they want to do for Green Lantern really upsets me for many reasons. First of all, if you know anything about Green Lantern and Hal Jordan, you are aware that he is who he is because of his upbringing and because of the tragedy he faces when he's a child, aka the death of his father. So anyway, Hal Jordan becomes who he becomes because of the tragedy that he witnessed when he was a kid, and also him coming into such great power via the Green Ring. But year one decided, you know what, we're going to do something a little different. We're going to make him a know-it-all scientist with a very cool demeanor. And while Hal Jordan I don't think is way over the top, and this is pre-destruction of Coast City, keep in mind that doesn't sound like Hal. Hal has always been a fairly confident and headstrong person to a T. So for someone to be very calculative and methodical in that sense, I don't gravitate towards him. There's no struggle. He knows everything. The other part is the Green Lantern Corps themselves, because in this story, they're all dead. So he basically discovers the ring in space, so say goodbye to Ebon Soar, the best Green Lantern of all time, who gave Hal his ring. Say goodbye to the Green Lantern Corps, so that means we're basically saying goodbye to a lot of major key characters in that respect. And let's have an origin story about basically a politically created character whose sole purpose is to restore the entire Green Lantern Corps. That part actually doesn't sound too bad, but completely rewriting the character and eliminating the Corps itself and basically redoing everything that made the character so great is a very big no-no on that part. So DC, that's strike one. Strike two is all the crap going on with DC Comics when it comes to their movies. Now, this broke not too long ago that Ben Affleck, his script for the standalone Batman movie, because this is going to be fun, his standalone script is basically going to be completely rewritten by the new director, Matt Reeves. Why is this such a big deal? Why does this really matter? Well, first of all, Ben Affleck is the reason we have one of the very few saving graces that was in Batman vs. Superman: Dawn of Justice. he's also the reason that when he does get creatively involved with the script, better things happen. If you don't believe me, look at some of his more recent work, stuff where he's had a little bit more say of his character and the script itself. He's very accomplished in screenwriting. Now, why is this a problem here? Because he was set to direct, and then he was having issues with DC based on his original script and the original idea, and DC is basically like, no, Batman is one of our golden boys, we really don't want to screw this up. And then they went along and said, well, we don't like this idea, we don't like that idea, and eventually Ben decided to step down as director, and they brought in Matt Reeves. And it was just recently discovered, over a week ago, that they're now going to basically throw away all of Ben's original script, and they're going to start redoing the whole thing over. Why is that such a big problem? Well, because according to Matt Reeves, he wants to focus more on the detective aspect of Batman, more of like a gritty noir type deal. Now, anyone who's ever read like the original Dark Knight Returns, that sounds like a good idea in theory, but I'm very curious as to why they would want to go this route when that's not the Batman that a lot of people come to really know and appreciate. Yes, in the Dark Knight trilogy, we do see Batman's character utilize technology in every single movie. And yes, it is cool, but whereas the character and what he does to fight crime always took center stage over like the noir detective stuff. So it leaves a very big red exclamation point above my head, a Metal Gear Solid, if you will, because I'm left to wonder what's going to happen next. Now, for those of you who don't understand why I'm feeling this way, just remember, they've already made Ben step down from directing, and now they're not going to be using his script. And the last time he had this little creative control with a character that involved a comic book, we had the Daredevil movie. So, might be time to sound the horns, but this could potentially be something bad. I'm really hoping that Matt Reeves does good. Remember, same director that gave us Spider-Man Homecoming, so I have not lost hope entirely, but still, DC needs to get their head out of their asses and stop trying to protect Batman so much and just let the people who love the franchise do the work. This is why Doctor Who has done so well lately. It's because they have people who love the show playing the roles. The fans have a lot of that control. So, I unfortunately have to give it strike 2. So, what else can DC possibly do to strike itself out? We've talked about the movies. We've talked about the comics. Well, what else is there? Video games? Well, well, yes and no. See, when it comes to DC Comics and video games, I really feel that unless you're talking about an Arkham series or Injustice, there's really not much else to say. Me personally, I love the Batman Arkham series. I think it's a very well-developed game franchise. And I really did like Arkham Knight, and people disliking it for, Arkham Knight is so-and-so. That's a stupid reason to dislike a game. Just saying. That's like saying you don't like a Final Fantasy game because one of the end bosses turns out to be a character you just didn't personally like. Well then, congratulations. The villain did their job. You don't like them. But, what game I'm talking about? Well, I'm actually talking about Injustice 2, believe it or not. Well, what about it? What's so bad? Well, the game itself is really good. A big improvement over the original Injustice. And I'm very blown away with all the extra additions and items per character you can get. What's really the negative here is like, it's basically like, this is it. DC really has nothing left to offer us in this category anymore. We're not going to get another Arkham game anytime soon. As a matter of fact, the only DC-related game that we're going to be getting anytime soon is going to be another Telltale Batman game. And while, from what I've seen, yes, it's cool, it's not the same thing. So, it kind of makes you wonder why they're not choosing to explore different avenues. With all the treatment they gave to Batman, you kind of have to wonder, with the success of Wonder Woman, why not go down a similar road? And why not utilize other big DC stars, like Superman, for instance? You know, the flagship carrier for the entire DC comic line. It's just really disappointing that, like, this is pretty much it. After Injustice 2, we're really not going to get a whole lot from DC Comics in the realm of video games, and it's kind of sad. Now, there was some rumors of there being a potential, another possible Arkham game, but I think it's pretty safe to say, without any real reassuring evidence and no real proof to back it up, it's not happening. They really don't have any plans for a real standalone DC game as it stands right now, because they're primarily working on Injustice 2, which is doing very well. Although I will say that there are some issues with the online multiplayer, which is very frustrating, especially when it comes to the competitive mode, because people have like to manipulate it, so you end up using a very bland character and against someone who uses a very souped up character. Thankfully, they do have a menu system to balance it out, but that hasn't stopped some people from getting through it. Injustice 2, good game, really nice selection of characters, although I am kind of curious as to why they're implementing more Mortal Kombat characters now. I'm aware Sub-Zero's in the game, but if you're paying really close attention to the character select screen, you could very easily pinpoint that Raiden is probably going to be the next Mortal Kombat character to come in. They planning on doing another DC versus Mortal Kombat game, and if they do, hopefully it's good. So just on the merit, and I know it's probably not fair, but just solely on the fact that we're not really going to get anything from them video game-wise anytime soon, that's their strike 3. They're going to sit out for a little bit and think about what they did. Unfortunately, for me, just let the bitter taste in my mouth.